As we've been reporting, House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes says he's not recusing himself from the panel's investigation. Democrats, who had already questioned Nunes' impartiality, are latching onto revelations that Nunes made a visit to the White House grounds last week to review sensitive intelligence materials. The White House says it didn't know about the visit until Nunes disclosed it on Monday. Susan Hennessey is a fellow in governance studies at the Brookings Institution, focusing on national security. She's also managing editor of the Lawfare blog, and she is in Washington. Susan, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Republican Senator John McCain says that Congressman Nunes has a lot of explaining to do. Nunes has given interviews and said he needed to visit the White House grounds to review certain materials which Congress didn't have access to. What are the key issues, in your view, that still need explaining?
Right, so certainly Congressman Nunes' decision to go to the press and not his vice chairman on the Hennessey or even House leadership, apparently he told Paul Ryan but not others, before sort of holding a press conference to make these broad but sort of vague and unclear allegations about whether or not the intelligence community had information, collected information about Donald Trump. Certainly the additional revelations that he had visited the White House in sort of the period in which he became aware of this material, it raises a question about whether or not the White House was in fact his source. That obviously would change the story significantly, because it would at least raise the specter that the White House had passed this information to him, not because they were genuinely concerned about the collection, but in order to sort of change the emerging narrative in the wake of Jim Comey and Admiral Rogers' testimony that really strongly refuted President Trump's claims regarding President Obama having wiretapped him.
Meantime, the White House is rejecting reports it sought to block former Acting Attorney General Sally Yates from testifying to the House Intelligence Committee. The hearing where she would have testified this week was abruptly canceled. What does that tell you?
Well, so it's not entirely clear. Of course, the White House is now denying, saying that they didn't attempt to block her. Sally Yates is saying through an attorney that they had. Essentially, what the White House is doing is asserting executive privilege. They're saying that Sally Yates is not able to testify about these communications because they're protected. The White House is allowed to block particular communications from coming forward. The timing concerns is that allegedly the period of time in which Congressman Nunes decided to not have the hearing in which Yates would testify coincided with her lawyer informing them that they did not believe that she could be barred from testifying. So that at least raises concerns or appearances that the reason the hearing was canceled was for the purposes of preventing Yates from testifying.
Well, you published a blog post before the first House Intelligence Committee hearing arguing for a select committee, writing, "The story of Trump and Russia, after all, is continuously unfolding. Unlike congressional investigations into discrete and completed episodes, the parameters of which can be defined at an investigation's outset, this one has to be both broad and nimble." Why, in your opinion, are existing committees poorly equipped to handle a continuously unfolding issue?
Right, so the primary concerns are sort of mundane, right? They have staffs that are relatively limited. They already have a hard job to do. Their jurisdictions are sort of defined, right? So yes, this is primarily an intelligence issue, but it's not exclusively an intelligence issue. It also relates to conduct that occurred within the United States, potentially financial ethics conflicts, right? So it sort of cross-cuts across different types of jurisdiction. So that's one reason why new select committees are formed in the first place. The other reason is really one of sort of legitimacy and accountability. At this point, we've seen major compromises of the Hennessey investigation. Certainly, Chairman Nunes' conduct over the past week has really undermined the credibility of that investigation. Additional revelations that Senate Select Committee Chairman Richard Burr had sort of, at the White House's behest, attempted to sort of kill stories, unflattering stories about campaign contacts with Russian intelligence. That also sort of creates the appearance that these investigations are not, in fact, independent, right? That there's a political bias. So by creating a new select committee, somebody staffed by people who have bipartisan buy-in, including Republicans who are really quite committed to getting to the truth, people like Senator John McCain, Senator Lindsey Graham, and others, that would reassure the public that this really is a serious inquiry. It's not a political investigation, but it's a group of members of Congress that are really committed to getting to the truth.
All right, Susan Hennessey, thanks very much for your perspective. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.